Only 3 African nations have ever played the official FIFA World Cup opening game. 3 nations, out of 23 tournaments, and 2 of them did it by beating the reigning world champions. Here is the full story from the very first World Cup to right now, and exactly what happened to each of them after. Before we start, let's talk about Egypt's participation in the 1934 World Cup, and why it does not count. Now, if you have done any research on this topic, you may have come across Egypt. And yes, Egypt played at the 1934 World Cup in Italy. They were the first African nation to ever appear at a World Cup, which is a massive deal. But here is the thing, there was no official opening game in 1934. The tournament used a straight knockout format, and all 8 first-round matches kicked off simultaneously on the same day. Every match started at the same time. There was no ceremony, no designated opener, no one game that launched the tournament. So Egypt's match against Hungary, which they lost 4-2, was one of 8 matches played at exactly the same moment. Historic? Absolutely. The opening game? No, that distinction belongs to a different era and a different set of African nations entirely. Italia 1990, the year African football changed forever. The opening game of the 14th FIFA World Cup. In one corner, Argentina, the reigning world champions, the holders of the trophy, the team with Diego Maradona in their squad. In the other corner, Cameroon, a nation making only their 2nd World Cup appearance, written off by almost every expert in the game. Nobody gave Cameroon a chance. Seriously, nobody. Argentina had won the World Cup in Mexico 4 years earlier. They had Maradona, one of the greatest players of all time, and they were playing the opening game of the tournament. This was supposed to be a statement. It was. Just not Argentina's. Cameroon won 1-0. The goal came from Francois Omambeek in the second half. And to make it even more remarkable, Cameroon finished the match with only 9 men after 2 of their players were sent off. They played the last half hour with 10 men and faced stoppage time with just 9 men against the world champions, and they still won. The football world did not know what to do with that information. But Cameroon were not done. They went on to beat Romania to finish top of their group, and then famously knocked out Colombia in the round of 16. Then they reached the quarterfinals, becoming the first African nation in history to go that far at a World Cup. Their run ended against England in extra time. But here is the painful part. Cameroon were leading 2-1 in that match with less than 10 minutes remaining. 1 goal up against England in a World Cup quarterfinal, and they let it slip. Roger Milla, who was 38 years old at the time, had been one of the best players in the entire tournament. The indomitable Lions had been genuinely indomitable. That 1990 campaign remains one of the greatest African tournament runs the World Cup has ever seen. All of it started from that opening game victory over the defending champions. Korea and Japan 2002, the colony sends the colonizer home. Korea and Japan 2002, Senegal versus France in the tournament opener. Except Senegal were not just playing any team. They were playing the team that had won the 1998 World Cup. The team that had won Euro 2000, the team ranked number 1 in the entire world. France had Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Zinedine Zidane, and David Trezeguet. They were on paper the most complete squad in the competition. Senegal were ranked 42nd in the world. It was their first ever World Cup appearance. Most people expected a comfortable French victory before halftime. What actually happened was Papa Bouba Diop scoring in the 30th minute, and then Senegal holding on for the full 90 minutes to win 1-0. The scenes from that match, the Senegalese players dancing around the goal in celebration, stripping off their shirts and piling them in a heap on the pitch, became one of the defining images of that entire tournament. But Senegal were not done either. They went on to finish 2nd in their group behind Denmark. They beat Sweden to reach the quarterfinals, and their run only ended against Turkey in the last 8 via a golden goal in extra time. Quarterfinals, on their World Cup debut, after beating the defending champions in the opening game. Meanwhile, France, Zidane, Henry and everyone else did not score a single goal in the group stage. They drew 0-0 with Uruguay, they lost 2-0 to Denmark, and they were eliminated from the tournament without scoring once. The reigning world champions, gone in the group stage, 0 goals. The colony had sent the colonizer home. That is not just football history. That is a moment. South Africa 2010, the goal, the glory and the heartbreak. 8 years later, the World Cup arrived on African soil for the very first time. South Africa hosted, and in the opening game at Soccer City in Johannesburg they faced Mexico. Now this was not a giant killing moment in the same way Cameroon and Senegal had delivered, but it gave the world something else entirely. In the 55th minute, a midfielder named Saifawe Shabalala picked up the ball on the left side, cut inside, and unleashed a left-footed strike into the top corner of the net. The roar from that stadium is one of the great sounds in World Cup history. 84,000 people in the first game ever played at a World Cup on African soil, and one of their own had just scored one of the great opening goals in tournament history. The game ended 1-1 after Rafael Marquez equalized for Mexico 20 minutes from time. But honestly, that Shabalala goal was the moment. It was the sound. It was the vuvuzelas and the energy and the emotion of an entire continent finally hosting football's biggest competition. The tournament itself, however, did not go the way South Africa had hoped. They lost 3-0 to Uruguay in their second group game. They beat France 2-1 on the final match day, which was a massive result in itself given France were a deeply dysfunctional team at that tournament. But it was not enough. South Africa became the first host nation in the history of the FIFA World Cup to be eliminated in the group stage. A singular heartbreak that would only be matched 12 years later by Qatar. The draw from the opening game, the loss to Uruguay, and a late win that came one game too late. They were out. Hosting the World Cup and not making the knockout rounds is a particular kind of pain. But that Shabalala goal will outlive the result. FIFA 2026 World Cup, the same fixture 16 years on. The expanded, historic FIFA World Cup has officially kicked off across North America. For only the fourth time in football history, an African nation took center stage in an opening day fixture. The team, South Africa, 16 years after Saifawe Shabalala sent a rocket into the back of the net in Johannesburg. The roles were completely reversed. This time, co-hosts Mexico welcomed Bafana to the intimidating cathedral-like atmosphere of the Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. Same teams, same fixture. Just 16 years later, marking a poetic first-of-its-kind direct opening round rematch in World Cup history. South Africa's road to this moment was pure drama. After being docked points and falling behind a fierce Nigerian side in CAF qualification, they fought tooth and nail, ultimately punching their ticket by a single solitary point. While that trademark resilience was on full display in Mexico City, the Hollywood ending wasn't meant to be. El Tri capitalized on their deafening home advantage, securing a clinical 2-0 victory to kickstart their hosting campaign on an absolute high, leaving Bafana reflecting on what could have been, the pattern that cannot be ignored. When you step back and look at the macro timeline of the World Cup, Africa's footprint on opening fixtures is the stuff of legend. 4 times now, an African nation has braced the pitch on the tournament's opening days. On 2 of those occasions, they went toe-to-toe with the reigning world champions, and both times, Africa shook the world. 1990, Cameroon stuns Maradona's Argentina. 2002, Senegal dismantles star-studded France. 2010, South Africa delivers one of the most iconic, commentary-perfect goals in football history. The 2026 opener against Mexico stands as the lone exception to Africa's historic Day 1 dominance. Enjoyed this deep dive into football history? Hit that subscribe button. It means the world to us. Welcome to the tournament.